All right, we're good. Hi, Tawanda. Cheers for joining for a conversation with BitTopia and myself. Yeah, thanks for agreeing to be on this episode. We've been just kind of going over some organizations that work in the blockchain space to give people an idea of what is possible. And your company, BitFinance in Zimbabwe, especially with the situation that occurred with the hyperinflation and $100 trillion notes and things like that. I think it's a very good example of what blockchain can be used for and the ramifications for all individuals. And I guess it's even more relevant now due to what's occurring in Venezuela and other parts of the world, which are seeing their currency kind of collapse. And these are the real examples that I particularly really want Bitcoin and blockchain applications to be a provider of solutions for, rather than the countries that are doing well. I guess yeah, they can use it, but for me, blockchain and Bitcoin was very interesting because it can help countries that kind of have some issues in terms of their currency, or they can improve a lot of things with it. So yeah, just tell us a bit about yourself, what BitFinance is, how did you get into crypto, just so people get an understanding of you yourself.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for having me. About myself, I'm a fourth generation engineer. So my father runs a construction company. My grandfather had a construction company as well. He was into earth moving. My great grandfather was in construction as well. When I grew up, I decided not to build roads like my father did, or houses like my grandfather or great grandfather did. So I decided to build software. But I'm an engineer nonetheless. I built my first software program in 1999 when I was 13 years old. So I'm a guy who wasted 12 years of his life. I've been building software ever since. I got into Bitcoin in 2012. This was before Bitcoin was cool. If you still remember the days, it was to install a wallet. Sometimes you had to do a /configure, make and so. So that was around the time I got into Bitcoin, but it was very hard to buy Bitcoin from Zimbabwe. In December 2014, I decided to drop everything I was doing and get into Bitcoin full time. And so I've been working in the space full time for like close to 3 years. It will be like 3 years in December.
Nice. I can relate to that. Before I joined in 2013 or end of 2013, I was working as a designer, web developer at my consultancy in Australia. And a friend kind of told me about Bitcoin and blockchain. I just looked into it. At first, I thought he was mad. But then I looked into it again. And then I came back and apologized for my comments. And yeah, very similar to you. I left everything I was doing and just fully dedicated myself to the blockchain and Bitcoin and every other thing that's been in this space since. And yeah, I think it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, to be honest.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really good thing to spend your time on. I mean, there aren't too many technologies apart from, I guess, virtual reality and augmented reality and things that are booming as much as blockchain space. But even those have some sort of limitations. But Bitcoin and blockchain, for me, it really resonated with how I view the world and how we can really connect peer to peer. So it's that part of it is very, very important for me, and it really is beautiful to see it kind of flourish. So yeah, that's cool. We know how you got into the crypto space. I guess taking it back a bit, can you tell us a bit about what was it like when the country went into hyperinflation? I guess it was quite tough. And if you have any advice for people in Venezuela right now that are going through a similar thing, we can leave the political side out of it, but just kind of advice for the ordinary people, what can they do to kind of protect themselves or, gain some support or anything like that?
So first thing I learned, from my experience, so my father had been running a construction company pretty much all his life. like in 2008, 2009, I saw him lose all the wealth he had built throughout his life in this hyperinflation environment. So one day you've got a lot of money in the bank, the other day you wake up and you're broke, your money is not worth anything. I remember working in a bar in 2009 when it was at its worst, realizing I've got enough money to buy 6 beers, so I buy a 6-pack and I carry it to my table. And that was what made sense, because every time I would have gone to the bar, the price would have changed. So prices were changing multiple times every day. It ended up being multiple times every hour. It was like it was crazy. And the moral of the story is you can't trust the government with your money. So the moral of the story is you should own your own private keys. You can't trust the government.
Nice, yeah. You know, that's one thing that I find really interesting with Bitcoin, and a lot of people, I guess, have different ideas on this, and they want to kind of leave their keys on exchange, or store their Bitcoins with other people. And for me, this is very puzzling, because you're going backwards. You've been given the keys to the castle, and you're saying, nah, I don't really want to hold on to it. I'll just give it to someone else. Hopefully they can look after it. And it's not until like it's too late that people kind of realize, oh, maybe I should have held on to it myself. And, through these videos and conversations, I kind of like really want people to understand it's really better if you hold your own private keys and don't put your money somewhere where they don't give you the option of holding your private keys. And just for people that don't know, the private keys are just your access key to your Bitcoin funds or any other cryptocurrency. So it basically allows you, in the case that the website service or whoever goes down, you can kind of take that key and open up a Bitcoin anywhere in the world and restore your funds. So it's kind of like a blueprint to your wallet. And whoever has it has access to your funds. So not only should you keep it, but you should make sure it's also kept securely as well. That's quite important. So yeah, that's great advice. I wish there was people kind of going into these regions and teaching people to keep their funds in a place that's away from governmental central control. And I guess that would really, it's quite sad to see, like you just said. One day you're quite wealthy, you're doing well, and the next day you could have nothing. And
like interest, basically because he couldn't take his money out of the bank fast enough.
Wow.
So typically what happens is you've got your money in the bank has a withdrawal limit, so you can only take out so much, but inflation is so fast you can't keep pace, and you can't send it out of the country because like in such an environment your bank probably doesn't have forex, and so you're basically losing value every second.
Wow.
Yeah,
that can be quite troubling for sure. And you also, like, when I met you in Amsterdam, you mentioned there's also sanctions on Zimbabwe, which prevents people from purchasing things using PayPal, and I guess going on to Coinbase to purchase Bitcoins. Can you tell us a bit more just like about that? I guess go into a bit more detail. We'll just have to wait a bit. I think his connection dropped out. Just have to wait for his other device to come on. But in the meantime, for people just watching, it's important to note that in countries that they have sanctions, it kind of prevents them to have access to what we take for granted, which is accessibility to PayPal, which lets you purchase things online or using credit card or debit cards, and ordering things to your doorstep. And we kind of take these things for granted. There are countries and regions in the world that you don't have access to these sort of facilities, so it's very hard to import things or purchase things online for yourself. And once that access is very hard to gain it back. Oh, here we go, he's back online. Yeah, I was just telling people what it's like to kind of, we take it for granted that we have access to PayPal, and many people may not realize, that we have access to these things, and that there are locations around the world that people don't have access to these. And yeah, I guess maybe you can add more to it. Like, what issues does it raise? Not being able to access things online as other people do.
So firstly, it's like the biggest disadvantage is you can't participate with your money internationally. So you can't buy stuff online. You can't get access to services such as Apple Music. You can't buy stuff on eBay. You can't buy stuff on Amazon. But because we don't have payment systems which work which work well even in Africa, so you can't get access to stuff such as like entrepreneurs can't build Amazons locally, so they can't build eBays. They can't build they can't build Apple Music and stuff like that. So you tend to get limited. You tend to get limited in what you can do. So that's the biggest disadvantage. Uh, I remember when I got into Bitcoin. I got into Bitcoin around 2012. I wanted to buy some on MTGOX, but I couldn't. Like I couldn't send money to MTGOX to buy some Bitcoin. So I couldn't use any exchange that was on the planet at the time. I remember I didn't want to start an exchange myself, so I remember writing to every exchange on the planet at the time and say, you guys should open up in Zimbabwe. Like the biggest thing you'll get is we are not ready to get into Zimbabwe yet. It's not even on our roadmap. Plus, you guys have sanctions, so so a lot of these fintech innovations are not available in Zimbabwe.
No, and is that I guess what paved the road for you to start BitFinance, and kind of you saw the lack of service provided to Zimbabwe and other African regions where people can use their currency.
Yeah, it was. So I think it was partly my background, which is engineering, technology, computers, programming stuff. Like also my experiences, so living through hyperinflation, like seeing the money my parents had worked for lose its value over time, like in those personal experiences, like kind of what got me excited about Bitcoin. Like, and also that entrepreneurship background, so being a fourth generation entrepreneur, like I also felt I kind of felt I can do this, and so that's how I ended up studying BitFinance, and also the frustration that no one was going to come and solve the problem. So it was really up to me. Like, and even now, which almost 3 years into it, we are really the only company that is trying to solve this problem. And so,
Wow.
so I get to the combination of different factors.
Why do you think there aren't other people kind of tackling this issue?
So kind of, first of all, I think generally it's hard. Like generally, it's a difficult area to understand. So I'm sure when you got into Bitcoin, like even the smart people, it would take about a year to understand this technology. So I think it's very hard to get a person with all the different variables. So you are frustrated by the problem. Like your personal experiences inspire you to want to build a solution. Like you understand how to do it and stuff. So I think it's very hard to get all the different factors and variables at the same time. So you don't get a lot. Yeah.
But what about outside the organizations? I guess entrepreneurs always seek new regions where they can kind of establish a new business idea or look for a new channel to kind of expand their services. So why do you think, like, I guess, other organizations that deal with this don't expand to African regions of Zimbabwe, or, why don't entrepreneurs kind of see the opportunity that exists and kind of come in there?
I think a combination of a bunch of factors as well. So one is like the market is still very big. Like even in their local areas and in the cities they are operating in, there is still a lot of room to grow in those cities. So So generally, it makes more sense to conquer the cities they are based in right now in their own countries before looking to these other markets they don't understand. Another reason is we're living in what is probably the world's most difficult market. So the world's most difficult place to start a company is in Zimbabwe. And so like life is hard enough as it is. I don't think all these companies want to make their lives more difficult by trying to start a company in Zimbabwe.
Yeah,
It's
fair enough.
literally the world's most difficult market. Like in that too, they've got their own problems, like in their own country. So as an industry, if you go to any Bitcoin startup and like they all have challenges getting access to developers, getting access to accountants, and like a lot of talent that kind of understands this technology, and they are growing very fast in their own like in their own cities, and so there's a lot of work to be done on the customer support and on the user experience and stuff like that. So they also have a bunch of problems to think about in their different markets.
Yeah, I guess they already have their own issues to worry about.
Yeah.
How hard is it to open up a company in Zimbabwe? Because you just said it's quite difficult. So I'm just wondering, like, what's the take to do so?
So registering the company is the easy part. The hard part is stuff such as like getting funding, getting talented developers, like having to deal with government institutions and corruption, like accessing the market, places where, like even though it's starting to get better, but a lot of people still find internet very expensive. There's still no infrastructure to be able to access these technologies.
Like, how expensive is it? Just so people get an idea.
Like it will probably not be as expensive as it is in the Netherlands. So for 2 GB on my mobile phone per day will cost me $3 a day to get 2 GB with my mobile network operator. But like this is a lot of money in a place such as Zimbabwe.
No,
So
for sure.
$3,
I
yeah,
understand.
$3 is
Compare it to like the earnings of someone in Europe or something. Like,
yeah.
I completely understand $3 is a lot of money for someone in Zimbabwe or other regions that deal with currencies in a different way. So I guess it's like a luxury.
Yeah.
So it's seen as a luxury, that unnecessary luxury for a lot of people, I guess.
Yeah, it's for a lot of people it is. So like and then you get services such as the exchange we've built, and services such as WhatsApp and Facebook, like which basically reduce the cost of making a telephone call, and we allow people to make international payments in ways they couldn't do before. So I think the services such as the ones we're building are changing that perception and making people see the internet more as a less as a luxury and more as a need to have service.
Nice. And you had mentioned also that there's a 20% fee, which people are quite happy to lose when they're converting, I guess, money in their account. So let's say they've been paid $100 and they want it in cash. They're happy to lose that 20% so they can walk away with $80, and that's quite normal. And like that, you mentioned that that's a good rate. If that it's if you get that, would be like, oh, cheers, that was good.
Yeah, 20% was around the time we met. It's now like 45%, 50%. But but let me take a step back to give you some background. So after hyperinflation in 2009, our Zimbabwe stopped using the Zimbabwean dollar. So we abandoned our own currency. The currency since 2009. We've been mostly using the US dollar. 9 currencies are legal tender, but we mostly use the US dollar. But our government, like your government, like any government in the world, we don't print money. Like we let me say it a different way. Our government spends more money than it collects in taxes and stuff like that. taxes, toll fees, and stuff like that. So governments print money to make up for that difference. It couldn't print money for 8 years, and so what they would do was, when it's time to pay civil servants, they'll just add zeros to their bank account and make transfers. And so all this money, all these US dollars which are in the bank accounts don't really exist. When you so when you think about it, if everyone tried to withdraw the money in their bank accounts, you end up with a crisis, and that's what happened in Zimbabwe. So eventually everyone tried to withdraw money, and there's a crisis because the banks don't have actual cash. And like, besides digital currencies such as Bitcoin, the only other way to make a cross-border payment is to use cash. So you find companies, and this is now in 2017, believe it or not. So companies are buying cash on the black market because they can't get it from the banks, putting that cash in a duffel bag and carrying it across the border to make a payment in Messina, South Africa, or in Zambia or in Mozambique. And so companies are still putting money on a bus, sending money on a bus to go and pay a supplier abroad. And these companies are buying cash at like a 40% premium, 50% premium. So I'll transfer $150 to your bank account, and you give me $100 in cash.
Wow, that's the interesting that I think a lot of people misunderstand is that they say, oh, but Bitcoin is just digital and like what's it backed by? But they don't understand that the world has been running on digital currencies for a very long time. In fact, I think only 2 or 3% of US dollars exists in cash. The rest of it is just digital numbers in a central database that's kind of just put into people's accounts, and that they forget these. So if everyone did try to do the same thing with any currency, the same thing would happen.
And so, but only people who've lived in places like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, or Germany, when it had that inflation, know that the money in your bank is not real money. Bitcoin is real money.
Yeah, you're right. They're the only ones that kind of have come to really see the truth.
Yeah.
Wow. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. I mean, like, I don't mean to put it down or anything. It's quite horrific in some ways that people have had to go through this. And it's like the money they have is in their account, and they can mainly use it just within the country itself. So you can kind of control that because it's just digitally put into their account. But the moment they want to actually use it outside is when they will face a lot of issues. And that's quite sad to see in today's day and age. For people, it would make it very hard for them to deal with organizations outside or expand on their business with partners and things like that. A lot of things we take for granted. It's quite hard to do. And how does it affect other countries? I mean, that's kind of the Zimbabwe perspective, but other countries around it. I saw your blog post also mentioned Nigeria. What's it like?
So Zimbabwe, which is in Africa, is not the only country in Africa which has these problems. So it's like Zimbabwe is just the worst case scenario. But when you go all over Africa's biggest market, so places like Nigeria, Angola, Tanzania, the banks all have forex shortages, and they've got capital controls. So even if your bank does have forex and can do international payments, your central bank probably has controls it, puts on the bank where you have a maximum you can send outside the country. So in places like Nigeria, it would be like $10,000 per year or something crazy like that. So it depends on which country you are. Some countries are worse than others. But in these places, we're also starting to see that demand for digital currencies like Bitcoin is huge. The demand is so huge. People are now paying on our exchange today. People are willing to pay a 50-60% premium for Bitcoin. You go to places like Angola, they are willing to pay double what the price of Bitcoin in places such as the US or the UK. And like, because people realize that the money in their bank accounts is not real money, so they are willing to pay more to get real money.
Wow. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. And, you know, like people should come and really speak to people in these regions to really understand the value of the money that, you know, they hold so, you know, they hold so dearly, and they think it's, you know, worth a lot more than Bitcoin. And, you know, a lot of times people say, you know, but how can we trust Bitcoin? It's not even regulated, blah, blah, and things like that. But we can already see what happened with so-called regulated money and the issues it's caused. And at the same time, Bitcoin, people forget, it is regulated. It is regulated by mathematical principles and, you know, rules, which for me make a lot more sense to follow than certain government or certain banks' principles or rules that we don't get any say on. There's no transparency on it. So
Yep.
it's just incredible. And you know, it's so interesting. I forget the guy's name, but the CEO of JP Morgan, he came
JP
out.
Morgan.
Yeah, he came out and called Bitcoin a fraud, and I just started laughing. I mean, this guy, his organization has been
Yeah.
fined so many times for doing, you know, dodgy stuff that JP Morgan's responsible for. And he was one of the main people at 2008 crash in the US, that was, you know, questioned about, you know, the way they participated in the market and, you know, their and just what they were involved with. And I just couldn't believe he had the guts to come out and say Bitcoin is a fraud, you know. It was just so funny to hear him say that.
Yeah, like I think I can understand where he's coming from. Like he wants to, so he understands his like banks are becoming dinosaurs, and like he wants to stay more relevant, and so I can understand his reasoning.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I would do the same, you know, if I was.
Yeah, I would do the same if I was CEO of JP Morgan. So.
Yeah, you wouldn't want him to come out and say, yeah, it's done. We've got nothing to challenge Bitcoin with. It's over, guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell it like it is, so I'll do what he did. So I understand where he's coming from.
For sure, I agree with that one. He's only doing what he has to do. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that some people take him quite serious. They look up to him and everything. I don't know why you would look up to a crook as a serious advisor, but such is life. Yeah, I found it very interesting. I guess, you know, we kind of went over the issues that occurred in Zimbabwe and like what's happening in Venezuela right now. And one of the things you mentioned and how to solve these issues is that no one is currently mining cryptocurrency in Africa. No locals have started their own cryptocurrency to solve local problems. And, you know, like, how can that help? So just so people understand, because, you know, it might be hard for people to grasp how mining cryptocurrencies in Africa can help locals. And maybe you can just kind of, in a very basic way, explain it. So anyone that's watching this might be able to get an understanding.
Okay, so let me first of all talk about the problem I tried to address in that blog post. So I tried to address the problem of why the price of digital currencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dash, why the price is significantly higher than other places in the world. And to put it into perspective, when you go back to 2010, 2009, when people started using Bitcoin, it was really just a bunch of people in the US, in the UK, in Canada, or in places like Japan, China, like who participated early on. So they started mining. And like for a few years, the very first few people to get into cryptocurrency in Africa were people like me. And I only got into cryptocurrency in 2012. And I remember on Quora, the only other person I saw from the continent talking about cryptocurrency was a guy called Michael Kimani in Kenya. So I didn't know anyone else who was in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency back in 2012. And even when I got into cryptocurrency, I couldn't buy them anyway. So I tried buying cryptocurrencies on any exchange. Like none of them were willing to allow a Zimbabwean to open an account. And even if I could create an account, I couldn't send money from my own country because of capital controls. My bank was my bank. So my bank, I bank with Standard Chartered in Zimbabwe. So first of all, at the time, it would cost $50 to send $50 to the US. That was the cost of sending money to the US. And they'll ask for stuff such as invoices and like evidence of what you're paying for and stuff like that. And now you can't do that anymore because of our forex crisis. But even back then, you couldn't buy cryptocurrency from Zimbabwe and from many places in Africa. And so people in Africa couldn't really participate. So now when we started our exchanges, so we now have a few exchanges in Africa. We're basically the only exchange in Zimbabwe. You can imagine the liquidity crisis on our exchange. So we have a lot of people who want to buy cryptocurrency. We don't have a lot of supply of these cryptocurrencies, and it's very hard to solve right now because first of all, if people were to mine, it would be expensive to mine in Africa. Cloud mining makes more sense. Our electricity cost in Zimbabwe is 9 cents per kilowatt hour, for example. And then secondly, it's too late to mine with your computer. So like even back in 2012, graphics cards were starting to get outdated and ASICs were starting to come up. So people can't mine in places such as Africa. And the third thing is we now have hundreds of cryptocurrencies. None of them were developed in Africa. And so when these cryptocurrencies do ICOs and raise money, like that money is going in Europe or the US or in Asia, like none of that money is coming to Africa. So our exchanges don't have liquidity. And the only way to solve it is when people start designing ASICs on the continent, which is probably going to take a while because we don't have great universities and we don't have a lot of companies investing in R&D in this part of the world. So the only way to solve liquidity, which makes sense for me, is getting more people to build cryptocurrencies which address local problems and getting more African startups and companies to do ICOs to kind of help the liquidity. So cryptocurrencies which are designed for us, which work for us.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it would benefit the government as well. But how do they view ICOs? Like if someone has a great idea on how to solve some issues, because I was at a meetup, when was it? 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and someone had some ideas about the northern part of Africa and how to look after logistics from the farmers down to the consumers and use blockchain perhaps as a solution. But yeah, what's the regulation like when it comes to ICOs?
That's the big advantage. So we generally don't have cryptocurrency regulation in Africa, and this is all over Africa. So every regulator I've spoken to are still just starting to learn how this technology works, and they've got bigger problems to worry about. So in Africa, generally, we've got real money problems and cryptocurrency, which a lot of people are not using yet because there's not enough liquidity, is probably not at the top of their list. And so we don't have regulation yet. I think it's going to come, but it's likely going to take a while. I see it as the opportunity to kind of build out your company, your infrastructure before regulation eventually comes and makes everything hard. But we generally don't have any regulation and restrictions. Interest in cryptocurrency is growing because we've got real money problems in this part of the world.
Yeah, and I guess that's a real big advantage for people looking to
Absolutely
get into some entrepreneurship and design some systems for local regions. Do you see, I guess, the progression compared to 2014? Do you see more people knowing about it? Do you have meetups? Do you see more people coming to these and their knowledge increasing in this topic?
Oh yeah, a lot. So, like when I got into Bitcoin, I remember I was the only one I knew talking about Bitcoin. Like now, I get so many WhatsApp messages from people who want to know what Bitcoin is or want to buy me coffee that I that I can't keep track. So I can't if I if I try to answer all of them, I wouldn't have a job. So I wouldn't be able to do my job. So I don't answer most of the WhatsApp messages I get. Demand is increasing. Like I said, on Bitcoin Fundi right now on our exchange, the price of Bitcoin is like 50-60% higher than it is in the US or the UK. And the demand, like the demand on our waiting list for OTC transactions is 10 times our volume. So our volume doubles every 3 months. And the demand has always been 10 times our volume, but we can't meet the demand because there's not enough supply. So interest is growing, especially because cryptocurrency allows people, it gives people financial autonomy. Like they can now spend their money in ways they couldn't before. All of a sudden, once you've got cryptocurrency, you can now do international payments. You can now collect international payments.
The payments, does the shipping work? Like, so let's say they have the sanctions, so I can't use PayPal, for example, to purchase something, and I use Bitcoin now to purchase something, and the shipping is no issues. Like I can receive products from international or corporations or entities without any.
International companies have been doing business with African companies for a long time. So we've got FedEx, DHL, post office is still around, shipping containers and stuff. So so people still do imports and exports.
Wow. So the only issue is currency.
The only issues are payments.
Pay something online. So if you fix the currency issue, you can really boost the entire economy and really help people, because everything seems to be there. It's just the currency is limited, right?
Yeah. So when I was going to the UK a few weeks ago, because I've got family in the UK as well. So they told me, can you bring us peanut butter? Can you bring us mazoe? We miss that Zimbabwean taste. And if my family doesn't visit Africa for 10 years, it means they can't taste it for 10 years unless someone is traveling there. Because payments is still very difficult. Like when you think about it, for my mom who's in the UK to send money to Zimbabwe using Western Union would cost 11 to 14% of the money she's sending. So if she's got 100 quid, about 80 something quid will get to about 80 something quid will get to the destination if you were to go to Western Union in MoneyGram. And these companies are the ones doing 90% of the transfers to Africa. So you can see there's a lot of room for a competitor like ourselves, because we facilitate remittances as well, and all the people that are doing it through us are getting negative transfer fees. So when she sends 100 quid, and she does it in Bitcoin, 150 quid gets to Zimbabwe, which is
why is it that you
great.
do this and the organizations like MoneyGram, Western Union can't?
I think they are because I've spoken to a bunch of people from similar companies. I think the thing is because they are regulated, they are kind of limited in the experiments they can make. So startups such as ourselves can innovate faster. Plus, they've got business models which work for them, which are profitable. And it's a big deal. It's not really easy to change these business models to adopt a new technology, and so that's why you get someone like a JP Morgan CEO saying that Bitcoin is a scam.
Wow.
Because they kind of have to protect their business models, which have worked for so many years.
Yeah. No, I can understand, and I guess you said they're one of the main providers of money into the country, or remittance, anyways. So that means they can kind of have monopoly over the market, so they can kind of determine higher fees and things like that that may not necessarily be naturally the price they should be charging, but they can do it anyways because no one is really competing with them. So just the fact that you offer your service, competing with them, And if there are others, hopefully this can lead to them kind of having to readjust their fees and doing it a bit better. But like, how can people just kind of go to your website? It's bitfinance.co, right?
Bitfinance.co.zw is our company website. But when you visit that, it will redirect you to our exchange, which is bitcoinfundi.com.
Yeah.
So that's BI. You can put a link in the show notes, right?
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and show people just what it looks like. And you can kind of, let me do it. So yeah, that's the website. So you can see how it spells. And you can also see bitcoinfundi.com.
Yeah. When you look on the top, you can also see the price of Bitcoin on our exchange. Or when you log in, $6,850 right now. So
wow.
Yeah.
I like that you put your funds are secured with BitGo. Like, I kind of like it, don't like it at the same time, but everyone seems to be doing it. So at least that way it's quite safe in some ways. That's just to give people some insurance. BitGo is used by organizations such as Wirex and Bitwala, who provide Bitcoin debit cards. So they're quite safe and secure in that sense. They're used by a lot of Bitcoin providers and Bitcoin debit card providers. And yeah, that's quite nice to see. But I can't believe that, the price is, it goes as high as 7,200, I can see.
Yeah, it's because people have no other means of making payments, and so like everyone is trying to get a limited amount of Bitcoin, and so people are competing to get a limited amount of Bitcoin. Our liquidity has been improving. Like I said, our volume doubles every 3 months, but it's not growing fast enough.
Yeah, and people are like happy to pay these prices, obviously, as you said, because the demand is higher than the supply, so it leads.
Yeah.
That's why I just wanted to show people the glimpse of the screen. And what other services are you looking to provide? You had mentioned something about a Bitcoin debit card within Zimbabwe and hopefully other African regions as well.
Yes, we are, but like we are working towards that, but we're still very early stage with that. So
of course. I don't mean straight away.
Yeah,
but it's on the roadmap.
Yeah, it's on the roadmap. We're still looking for a bank that will be our BIN sponsor. I'm sure we'll eventually find one, but we are right now we're focused on preparing to do fundraising. We're going to do it via an ICO for a few reasons. So one is because of the cryptocurrency liquidity. Two, it's a great way to fundraise. Three, we want to set an example. So we think cryptocurrency and more people building cryptocurrencies to solve local problems with a good business model and a good team is one way we can solve cryptocurrency liquidity on the continent. We haven't really had an ICO like that has been done well in Africa, so we'll likely be the first one to do that as well.
I hope you do really well. That's a great idea. You can kind of pave the way for other people to see what can be done, and it will be lovely to see that. And what do people kind of get? Do you have any plans for it? That's going to be designed later, the token mechanics of it?
Well, I can share that now, but this stuff may change as we are as we're consulting different advisors and people who've done it before successfully. A lot of stuff is changing, but we'll soon be putting out a white paper. But basically, to be a token would which is built on Ethereum ERC20. We're going to put out a limited number of tokens. So we will promise not to add more tokens as well. We are going to sell 50% of those tokens in a public ICO. We are going to have a scheme where we try to buy back tokens. So we're going to buy back 50% of the tokens in existence, but we'll do that every quarter, and we'll spend 20% of our gross revenue to buy back tokens and then destroy them. So this will be a deflationary currency. So the idea is hopefully this currency will increase in value over time. We're going to work to get it listed on major exchanges because it's really important to us that people will be able to use it to do cross-border payments. And one way to make that possible is if it's tradable across international exchanges.
Nice.
Yeah,
I really like to
and
see that.
and a lot of the stuff I'm saying now may change because we are talking to various experts, people who've done it before. Like we're talking to different lawyers as well to get their opinions. Like we want to do it right. We don't want to get sued because someone thought they were buying a security or something like that. And so we are we're also getting good legal advice and stuff. So a lot of the details may change as we approach when we do release a public white paper, but we'll see.
Nice. And when do you think the white paper will be ready, just for people to kind of keep up? And would it be just done through the Bitcoin Fund, the website, or is it under a different entity?
It will probably be ready in a few weeks. So besides preparing for the ICO and the white paper, we're going to rebrand and have a new name at the end of the week. So when you visit Bitcoin Fundi this weekend, you're going to notice that the name has changed. But I don't want to announce the new name yet. But we're going to rebrand first, and then we'll probably be announcing our ICO, our token. Our token name will be based on our new name.
Nice. Okay. And if there are any developers or people looking to kind of contribute, where can they find you? Will you set up like a community on Telegram or Slack and things like that so people can join?
Would really love to connect with developers, etc. I would also really love to connect with people who would love to have a look at the draft of the white paper we have now to give us feedback on what we can fix and what we can make better. And people would love to contribute. So I'll send my details and hopefully you can put them in the show notes at the bottom.
No, I would love to look at it myself personally. It sounds really interesting.
I'll send you a link just after this show.
Yeah. Nice. Hopefully we can share it with others when it's ready on your website as well. Is there anything else I guess you want to let people know of, if they have ideas or like they're a bit curious on what else they can do in the region?
Well, just that I think we happen to be, I don't know if I should say the wrong place at the right time or the right place at the right time. But like Zimbabwe, like generally in Africa, we have so many money problems and like real money problems. And so when you look at a place such as the US or Australia, you can get a debit card, you can spend anywhere. Like you don't get charges to spend it. Like the financial system just works. In Zimbabwe, so Zimbabwean banks are the most profitable banks in the world. There's a report on this as well. But the banks don't really lend to anyone, so you don't have a market of people borrowing money, and they make their money from transaction fees. And so, like every time I swipe my card, I get charged like $2 or $3 every time I make a payment at a till or a point of sale terminal. And they're making super profits because there's just no real competition and people don't have real alternatives. And we are trying to solve that problem here.
Yeah, well, it's good to know. Like, a lot of people don't know what's going on. We tend to live in our own bubble and think everyone has debit cards and credit cards and PayPal and things. So it's really good to let people know, I guess, what's going on, outside of our so-called bubble. That there are people without these services, and that's what Bitcoin, for me, as I keep saying, and people seem to have forgotten a bit, started off as. That's what really made me passionate about it, that it gave choice to people that hadn't had that choice before, or it was very hard for them to have that choice. So it really gives a voice to the underbanked and underserved people, and I hope to see it come up more in these areas. And you're doing a great job, I guess, you know, spreading the message. And I hope there are other people that see the opportunity to kind of make a change and go into these regions. And yeah, just team up with people like yourself and, you know, do some together. But yeah, it's been great speaking with you. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, you just reminded me. I was at the Breaking Bitcoin conference in France, and like one of my biggest takeaways was I keep forgetting the name of the speaker, and he said, Bitcoin's biggest innovation is resistance to authority, and and that really resonated with me. So I do agree with what you just said.
Yeah, for sure, and that's what it should be. That's why it really pains me when people use centralized exchanges and do the same things they used to. But you know, it's not their fault either. It's because we're kind of used to trusting centralized authorities, and I guess Bitcoin. You know, if you treat it essential, you can turn central again. But it has given you a road where people aren't used to it. It's a bit dark and it's a bit thing. You know, you got to learn what you're doing a bit. But once you do it, it's a beautiful path because you have full control over your assets. And what people don't realize is after 2008, not much was changed in the global financial markets and systems. So the fact that we think the world will just continue on without another financial crisis at some stage is just naive in many ways.
Yeah.
So, you know, sooner or later, I hope people realize it's best to control your own assets, especially in a world where increasingly is seeing a lot more monitoring and control and regulation and things like that. Yeah, it's good to see, I guess, some options where we can take some sort of a control back and personal sovereignty kind of highlighted in that. Well, thank you so much, Tawanda. It's been really great speaking with you, and I hope people can learn. And yeah,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Share the video to your community as well, and if there's, I'll put some links to your website, and hopefully, when you have the white paper and the website changes, I'll update the links as well so people can participate. But cheers,
Thank you.
yeah, I hope people enjoyed it. I'll speak to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you, Amin.
Cheers.